So, Christmas is here again, and the vibe is as romantic as usual, just like every single Christmas. But for someone unfortunate enough to spend the Christmas alone, like me, things couldn't be that good, I guess. So, in this quite unfortunate situation, I start to think about, what really caused my dating experience to be so unsmooth so far. And so today I just want to share with you guys some of my opinions and some of my thoughts about this issue. So, yeah. Okay, so let's start about with talking about myself. So, my name is Jihao. I'm 26 years old and I'm from Shanghai, China. So I'm currently studying psychology and archaeology at Uni Freiburg in Germany. And so far I have lived in 5 countries, which is China, the US, France, Germany, and Spain. And I do more or less speak the language of all 5 of these countries. And so for hobbies, I also really like painting, playing guitar. I like bachata, like singing, dancing, playing on guitar, all of them. I also love cooking, and most importantly, I really love traveling. So, like, this is my third year in Europe right now, and so far I have experienced a lot. I would say I'm really satisfied with everything that I'm experiencing, and I'm also really satisfied with, in general, who I am. But the only thing I would say is a bit of, which could improve a bit, is, of course, to find a relationship. And so yeah, like if that's something that could be improved, then I would say I'm perfectly satisfied with my life. And so yeah, I but the thing is, actually, I have to admit that I haven't had a relationship so far, and I know it's a bit shameful to admit it sometime, but unfortunately, that's the reality. So yeah. Okay, so if you ask me what is the problem, then I would tell you, well, there's a lot of problem. I think there are several points that's definitely worth mentioning because I think it has something to do with society. But before we go to that, so first of all, let's talk about a personal problem of me, which I would attribute it to bad luck. Because so the thing is, when it comes to relationship, I am someone that really values connection. Like even if it's like a very casual or not serious relationship, I would also really value the connection. But the problem is like so every girl, or at least most of them, that I really have a good connection with, that I could really vibe with, they all in the end turned out to have a boyfriend. So yeah, that's like this thing happened to me a lot, at least in Freiburg. So that's, I would say, at least, yeah, like I can't say it's a problem, but it's just something that keeps on happening to me. So yeah, but now aside from that, I would like to talk about, let's say, some of the social problems that I think contributes to this hardship. So the problems. To start with, as I mentioned before, sometimes I feel very ashamed of telling people that I have never had a relationship before. And I think the fact that I need to be ashamed of telling people that is already something really problematic. Because you see, there's one basic fact about modern society is that it judges men quite harshly. That is to say, the society demands a lot from men. So you see, you need to possess a lot of characteristics to be considered as a valuable man. So let's say you need to prove your value through what? For example, good appearance, good social skills, muscular body, of course, uh, the cliche, good salary and work. Then of course you also need like interesting personalities and hobbies and everything. And something very importantly, which is often unnoticed, is your ability to attract girls. So why does the ability to attract girls matter? So let's see it from both the perspective of a man and a woman. So for men, if they know that you're very successful with girls, then they will think that you are a real man and therefore immediately respect you. So, like in this case, let's say even if they don't like you, even if they find you as an asshole somehow, but still they will still admire you for your ability to attract girls. And on the contrary, if they see that you're not that attractive or not that successful with girls, they would immediately lose respect on you. So what will happen is that like they will see that okay, so you are not a real man, you're weak, and therefore, as a real man myself, I have the right to teach you how to be a real man, how to behave like a real man. Then for girls, it's the same thing. So let's say if they know or simply believe that you are very successful with girls, they would immediately find you attractive. Because the thing is, well, on one hand, you can say it's because of jealousy and also the competition with other women. But then, like on the other hand, when they see that okay, other girls think that you're attractive, then they will say, okay, so your attractiveness has been confirmed, and therefore they feel more secured or even honored to be with you. So likewise, if they see that you're not successful with girls, then in this circumstance, your unattractiveness with girls has been proven, and of course, they wouldn't see the value within you, and therefore it's unlikely that they would want to be with you. So you see, the core of the problem is not about the reason why you are unsuccessful. It's all about the results. So basically, if you are unsuccessful from the beginning, then it's also quite hard for you to be successful in future, and which kind of creates, let's say, a vicious cycle. Because then, like, the more the more failures you get, it results in more failure, and then in the end, it damages just your self-esteem and confidence. And the worst part of this vicious cycle is that you can't really talk about your frustration. Because again, if you just talk about how much frustration, how much failures you get with girls, then people would just think that you're just simply complaining and self-pitying, let's say it this way. And so when you try to explain the reasons, let's say, as what I'm doing right now, people would just think that you're weak and you're kind of finding, let's say, excuses for failures. And then in this case, it really breaks your confidence and your self-esteem. So like for a man, I think this is probably like one of the worst things that could happen to us. So, but of course, like you can say, sure, I just don't talk about it. But the thing is, like, if you don't talk about it and you pretend that you don't have a problem, then deep down inside, you are still frustrated and depressed. So, with no one to talk to, and you just kind of have to hide everything deep down your heart the whole time, it will just cause you psychological problems, depression, you name it. So, yeah, like, what I'm saying is like these are the reason why I'm telling you all these is because these are actually things that had happened to me in real life, like the way I've been treated, some of the things that I had to go through my heart about just because like I'm not too successful with girls. And so the thing is, if you're a man and you're unsuccessful with girls somehow, this alone can have a very devastating effect on your mental and social status, because then in the end it's about if people are going to respect you or not. So I think the core of this problem here is, let's say, in this modern society, we have a very superficial and, in a way, primitive definition on the perception of a valuable man. Because you see, like, if you, like, I think somehow in modern days, women are still being seen as trophies. So, like, as a man, the more you can get, the stronger you are, the more valuable you are. And then, of course, the result of this is the so-called lad culture, which men kind of take pride in. Let's say how many girls I can sleep with, how many parties I can go to, stuff like that, like superficial, primitive stuff. So yeah, I think this is like a really serious problem. But of course, even though it's really devastating, it's very devastating, but I wouldn't say it's the main problem, because after all, it's girls who are the ones who decide what kind of guy they want to be with. So my next point is actually going to be about the choices or the perceptions that girls has on men. So the second problem that I'm going to talk about is actually, well, to be honest, I'm kind of confused about what exactly girls are looking for from guys nowadays. Or to make it more specific, so what's the perception of attractiveness and masculinity nowadays? So like as I mentioned, even though I keep on meeting like girls who are taken, but there are indeed a lot of single girls that I've met already. But I don't think it actually made my dating life any easier, because I think like for me there are in general two situations that happens a lot. So the first situation is like, so the girls that I meet, they just don't seem to be looking for any guys, giving out, let's say in general, this very inapproachable vibe. So but yeah, like that's something I will talk about a bit later on in my video. So I would focus on right now the second situation. So let's say I have a very good conversation with her in an event. Um, let's say when we just met each other. So everything went well. We exchanged numbers and everything. But then afterwards, it's just quite hard to, ask her out again. So it seems like they're kind of interested in me just for the moment. And then afterwards, I don't know, it's like for that moment, it seems as if they just really wanted like a good company. And afterwards, it just doesn't really matter to them. So like to be honest, I don't really know what to make of this situation. Like, can I call it Hakuna Matata? Just enjoy the day, something like that. So yeah, like anyways, my interpretation on both situations is that like either way, they're not interested in me enough. So, but the question is like why? Why am I not interesting enough for them? So is it because my appearance? Well, I don't know. I don't consider myself as bad looking. And if some girl says like, okay, I don't want you just because of your appearance, like I will say, okay, then in this case you're kind of superficial and in a way possibly racist. I don't know. And then like social skills, I don't know. I mean, okay, I wouldn't say like I'm like the master of socializing, but like I still by all means see myself as an outgoing person, and I think like my social skills have definitely improved a lot in the past years. So I wouldn't say that's like so big of a problem, considering the fact that there are a lot of guys who are like super introverted and don't really know how to react in social situations. Or is it because I'm not confident enough? Well, I don't know what to say, because I guess it depends on what you think as being confident. Like if you think being confident is being aggressive or sexual or even narcissistic, then okay, I can tell you that I'm not that confident. So yeah, the core of the question I think is like, so um, it's possible that what I have right now inside me is just what it's just not what the girls are looking for nowadays. So the question is, what are they looking for exactly? And and to be honest, my frustration is that I don't know. I really don't know what they're looking for nowadays. And because like if I don't know what they're looking for, then of course I also wouldn't know what to improve on. So like this is kind of like a yeah, I don't know, it's kind of fucked up, I have to say. But then like if you look at the nature of this question, then I would say it's like it's actually about what kind of personality traits are considered attractive for girls nowadays. And I would say, so since girls are in general attracted by men who are masculine, I would say masculine like can in a way be equivalent with attractiveness. So the more precise description of the question is, what is considered masculine for girls nowadays? So of course, like about what is considered masculine in this world, that's a very hard question to answer, because in the end every girl has like a different perception on what masculinity is. So let's say some girls would say having a muscular body is very masculine. Some would say being aggressive and direct or even sexual, that could be masculine. Some would say having tattoo and dressing very stylish, that could be masculine. But I think like whatever the case, in the end, it's all about being tough. So like toughness is considered as the core of masculinity. So of course I'm not saying it's wrong, but like I'm just saying in this case, I would also like to share with you my perception on what is masculinity. And if you're watching this video, you can also compare it with your perception of masculinity to see if there are any differences or anything in common. So, when speaking of masculinity, what comes into my mind first would be openness and being adventurous. Why do I prioritize this? Because if you look into history, this is actually a spirit which is buried deeply down into human nature, and that's why you can see them in classic mythologies. So, for example, in Greek mythology, you will see figures like Odysseus, Dionysus, and also the Argonauts who went for the golden wool. These are typical adventurers. And also then in the Roman mythology, which were heavily influenced by the Greek ones, you see Aeneas, for example, which is kind of like the Roman equivalent of Odysseus. And secondly, this kind of openness and, let's say more importantly, the spirit of adventure is exactly what great figures in history, generals and explorers, have been doing for thousands of years. For example, you have Alexander the Great, who campaigned all the way to India. You have Julius Caesar, who campaigned in Gallia and Britannia, eventually the whole Roman world. And also you have Ferdinand Magellan, I think that's the pronunciation, who is a Spanish navigator who circumnavigated the world. And these are indeed some of the most masculine figures in human history. And what do they have in common? Openness and adventurous. So like in the modern world, or in my life, I will say, this is a kind of character or trait that I could really relate with, because the thing is, like, I've been living in the U.S. For 3 years when I was a kid. When I was 8 years old, I moved there with my family, even though that was the first time I gone out of China. And now I'm in Europe. It's my 3rd year here, and I've lived in 3 countries already in Europe: Germany, France, and Spain. And so yeah, I think, like, me personally, I can really relate to this kind of adventure spirit. And also because for all of these aforementioned figures and even those mythological figures, like, what they have is, like, they have this kind of openness to embrace new cultures and to face new dangers. And yeah, I think, like, for me, this kind of spirit is definitely an ultimate display of masculinity. Okay, so to demonstrate some other traits or perceptions on masculinity, I would like to show you guys a clip from the movie Gladiator. And I think, like, that's a pretty good summary of most of the traits that I would consider as masculine. So it's basically like a dialogue between Commodus and Marcus Aurelius, which is his father, about what should be considered as a virtue. So we're gonna show the video first, and we're gonna go back to my opinions. Okay, so as seen in the video, the virtues that Marcus Aurelius had mentioned was the following four. So wisdom, justice, fortitude, and temperance. And the virtues, according to Commodus, would be the following four. So, first of all, ambition to excel. Second of all, resourcefulness. Third, courage in various forms, not on the battlefield apparently. Fourth, devotion to family. So, I think this is a quite good summary of the personality traits which I consider to be masculine. So, what I want to emphasize is, instead of toughness, I think virtue should be the core of masculinity. So, well, of course, if you look in the movie, so the virtues that Marcus Aurelius listed are supposed to be the so-called positive personality traits, and the four virtues which Commodus mentioned are actually the so-called negative personality traits. You can say it this way. But in my opinion, I would say all eight of them matters. Like all eight of them are signs of masculinity. So let's talk about all eight of these virtues one by one. So wisdom. What is wisdom? I would say wisdom is first of all a good judgment of situation and people, and also the ability to make the right decision for yourself. And of course, once again, your openness towards other opinions and culture. I mean, of course, there are other definitions for wisdom, but this is the ones that I have so far. And then justice. What is justice? I say it's about treating people fairly. So let's say if someone treats you nicely, you should, in return, treat him with gratitude. And if someone treats you quite bad, offensively, you should also have the courage to confront this person. So let's say in general, you have the courage and ability to defend yourself, and that's definitely a display of justice. And fortitude. In my opinion, fortitude means resilience and endurance. So it means that like even if you're under a very desperate situation, very hopeless situation, you still do not give up your hope. And if possible, an even better display of fortitude would be that you maintain optimistic under such circumstances and you eventually prevail out of this dangerous situation. And so with temperance, well, I would say temperance is definitely something related with having a good self-control and also self-discipline. Let's say it this way. So let's say if you have a goal, you can persist on achieving this goal, no matter how hard it was for you, no matter what kind of danger, what kind of I don't know, obstacles you've experienced. And then going to the virtues of Commodus. So first of all, ambition to excel. I interpret it as being progressive. So it's like, as a man especially, you should always try to improve yourself. Doesn't matter regardless what kind of status you are right now. Resourcefulness. So again, it has something to do with dealing with dangerous situations. So it's like, you can be flexible enough to find a solution to whatever situation you're in. And of course, you are also quite creative with finding solutions, which is a pretty smart and intelligent thing. And courage, as Commodus has mentioned. Of course, nowadays we don't have that many battles. So as a man, you don't have to really distinguish your courage on battlefield. But yes, there are a lot of things you can still show your courage in. For example, in general, men should be brave. Okay, like you should have the courage to face yourself, to change yourself, even though it's a hard thing. You can be adventurous. That's also brave. So yeah, it covers a very wide variety of things, and also devotion to family. I mean, I think that's a quite obvious one because as a man, you should care about your family. You should have a good sense of responsibility. I mean, devotion, it's not just to your family, of course, to your career, to your friends, to in general everything you care about, and that's a pretty important thing. Because yeah, I mean, men should be responsible. This is at least what I've been taught in the Chinese culture or the Asian culture in general. And of course, aside from these traits, I would also add a few more. So let's say, for example, being sympathetic or empathetic, and have a good sense of humor. Confidence, of course, is very important, and being respectful, which is equally important as anything else. So yeah, I think like all these traits are very important for a man to have, and like I don't know, I think like these are the exact things that girls should be looking for nowadays. And like after all, I suppose you do wish your future husband or the father of your future kid to have some of these traits, right? So I think the problem about masculinity is like right now nowadays girls just don't seem to realize the importance of these traits, and therefore they tend to look for, let's say, more superficial traits among guys' personalities, basically. And I don't know. It's sad that all these aforementioned personality traits just don't matter to a lot of girls nowadays somehow. And to be honest, when I think about it, I feel exactly how frustrated Commodus was when he realizes all his virtues were just not accepted by his father. And yeah, but then like also ironically, it's like whenever you talk to girls about what kind of men they want, they would always tell you, oh, something like someone really special, someone like blah 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 blah. And then when I look at my situation, it really made me think about this one Chinese idiom which is called 叶公好龙. So it's like the translation of this would be, let's say, a gentleman's obsession on dragons. So the story goes like this. There's one gentleman in ancient China. So he really has this obsession on dragons. So like he's so obsessed that he decorates everything in his room, in his house with artworks related to dragon, sculptures, paintings, stuff like that. And then one day, the dragon living in the sky, he actually heard about this gentleman and he was really intrigued and he really wanted to pay this gentleman a visit. So the dragon just came to his house on a stormy day. He goes into his room, and guess what? The gentleman got so scared, he ran out of his house immediately. So what I'm saying is like whenever, like when I hear girls saying, "Oh, I want to find like someone who's really special," blah 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 blah, it kind of reminds me of this gentleman's obsession with dragons, because like the thing is, I'm pretty sure like when they really meet someone special, when they really meet someone who has like, you know, a lot of my aforementioned traits, they probably wouldn't actually be that interested. So yeah, I don't know. This just seems kind of ironic to me, to be honest. So in the end, what I would like to say to girls, consider it as advice. Um, just be a bit more insightful when it comes to choosing guys, you know, because the thing is, what you value from a guy, it kind of reflects on what kind of person you are. So it's like, yeah, I mean, it reflects on how cultivated you are. Like if you value a guy who is, let's say, very honest, it means honesty is something very important to you. And on the contrary, if a guy who does like a lot of fraud and stuff like that, you find this guy attractive, then it's safe to say that you also find like a dishonest guy somewhat attractive. Like might be the best example, but you know what I mean. So yeah, in the end, I could only say make your choice wisely. So the third problem that I want to mention is actually the passiveness of girls. So that includes, for example, acting as if they aren't looking for any guys at all, waiting to be approached, or in general, not making an effort at all. So yeah, like remember I mentioned earlier that I'm gonna talk a bit about girls who don't seems like looking for guys a bit later on the video, and yeah, now's the time. So when I say about this type of girls, like imagine yourself in a party or an event in general. So you would always see this type of girl. So they're really well dressed, they look fabulous, and you really want to talk to them. But the problem is they always stick with their friends, and they look very serious. They don't really smile at you, and they just don't really talk to anyone outside of the group. And yeah, even if you, okay, let's say even if you kind of talk to them, but like you can pretty clearly tell that they're not really making an effort to have a serious conversation with you. So these are the kind of behaviors that I would say like not looking for guys. So like especially here in Germany, I get into this kind of situation a lot because apparently here in Germany the culture is really about keeping distance from people. So I guess it definitely played a role. So yeah, like unfortunately, I guess it contributed to me here in Germany meeting a lot of girls who are of this type of category. Um, so what I would say is that it's actually quite interesting because like I would say a lot of girls here in Germany they have like a quite contradictory mentality in my opinion, especially when it comes to meeting guys. So like on the one hand they seem very feministic, um, even quite masculine in certain ways, and they really try hard to appear to be independent. But then on the other hand, like when it comes to dating a relationship and stuff like that, they somehow go back into this very conservative traditional role where they really expect guys to make the first move on them, and then even like when they're talking to guys, they're like they are expected to behave in a very how to say reserved, or yeah, like a reserved way. So yeah, I don't know, like this is for me, it's a quite interesting thing because like before I came to Germany, I didn't really expect girls here to be, reserved. Like in my opinion, like in my expectation, I always thought more like, okay, girls here, they're quite um, open or independent or very confident. But yeah, so I would say that's definitely something, somewhat of a culture shock for me. And so yeah, like also about this kind of things, I do have, let's say, a lot of experiences, and I'm gonna tell you one of these stories just now. Okay, so this is actually a really funny story. So as I mentioned before, I really like bachata. I like dance bachata, even though I wouldn't say I'm not like a super good dancer. So in Freiburg, I also go to a lot of dancing events, which is actually like a quite big thing in Freiburg. So like when I go to dancing event, of course I'm not there just to dance. I'm also there to meet people, meet girls, and what I see is like, so okay, of course in a Latino dance event, usually as men you would definitely have to ask the girl, invite the girl to dance, but then usually when I do that, I realize like even though I try to make a connection with them, most of the time they just keep their mouths shut, and eventually this kind of turns me off from making further connection with them. So yeah, that's kind of like a general problem. Then, like a few weeks ago, when I was in Hamburg, I also went to a Latino dance event. So again, in bachata. So I asked this one girl to dance with me as usual. And then the thing is, so when I started dancing with her, what she did was like, so she was just looking at me directly in the eyes and simply smiling. Like, imagine she was just staring at me in the eyes and smiling. So, like, to be honest, I didn't know what to make of it because like it kind of stressed me out a little bit, and I don't know what she wants me to do. Like, should I talk? Should I not talk? Does she want me to fuck off, or does she want me to get closer to her, or something like that? So like this kind of stalemate kind of lasted for 1 minute, and then in the end, since I was traveling at the time, I was thinking like, okay, fuck it, let's give it a try. So I just started talking to her, and in the end, turns out that she also had the intention to talk to me, and in the end, we had like a really good conversation together. So, but the thing is like, if I didn't talk to her in the beginning, then what would happen is like we would dance the whole song without speaking a word, and she would just stare at me in the eyes for the whole time, and afterwards just say goodbye to me. So, what's my analysis on the situation? So again, I believe that she had the intention to talk to me, but instead of initiating a conversation when I asked her to dance, she passively, first of all, waited for me to approach her and ask for a dance, and second of all, even when we were dancing, she just didn't make an effort to start a conversation and expected me to start a conversation by all means. So this really made me think about a question. So why is it always that the man has to make all the effort to approach the woman? So it's like, why are girls still think that they should be very prude and reserved, even it's like in the 21st century? So yeah, because like in my opinion, I think like honestly speaking, for the 21st century, this kind of attitude is quite backward and conservative. And I don't know, like if I look at it from a negative perspective, I think it's kind of just an excuse for being lazy or even arrogant. But then, like, I guess it's also true because that many, no, I mean, I'm not talking about like, okay, so like being arrogant or lazy, but I guess like this is actually the mentality for really a lot of girls, because they believe that like even if they don't make an effort to approach guys, like guys would still approach them anyways, which is unfortunately kind of true nowadays, because guys are just horny and they just want to approach girls. And I guess like, so they would expect that, okay, out of all these guys, hundreds of them that approach them, there will at least be one that's like a good match or at least work somehow. But then, yeah, but then this is also kind of ironic for me, because again, it reminds me of this another idiom in Chinese, which is called 守株待兔. So basically, translation is like, so you wait next to a tree and wait for a rabbit. So the story goes like this. Again, in ancient China, there was this one hunter. He went to the forest one day to try to hunt something. And just as he walked past by a tree, a stupid rabbit rushed super quickly towards the tree, hit his head on the tree, broke his neck, died. So basically, the hunter just picked the rabbit up and he had a very nice meal from the rabbit. So then he thought, okay, I will definitely be able to replicate this luck. So for the next days, months, years, what he did was like, instead of hunting actively, he just stands next to the tree and waits for the next rabbit to hit his head on the tree. And guess what? It never happened. And he got bankrupt. So yeah, why am I telling this story? So my point is that like, as a girl, if you want to just sit idle and wait for the right guy to appear, then most likely you're gonna be as lucky as this hunter, which means most likely you will not be this kind of guy. But why? Because normal guys, they have first of all self-esteem, and second of all, they have respect for women. So the thing is like, if they see that you do not want to be approached, then of course, out of respect, we wouldn't approach you to begin with. And second of all, okay, let's say even if we approach you, then from what we are seeing, we're most likely going to get a rejection. So in order to protect our fragile self-esteem, we just wouldn't approach you. And this is absolutely normal. So like, if you're a girl and you are upset with it, like I could only say I ask for understanding. But the thing is, so you're not gonna, if you're the hunter, you're not gonna get the rabbit you're waiting for. But what you will get is the big bad wolf, which are the fuckboys. Why? Because the thing is, fuckboys, they don't care about what you think, okay? And they will just use whatever it takes to get you. So basically, your rejection means nothing to them. Your attitude means nothing to them. And by all means, as a fuckboy, they're gonna be shameless. So they wouldn't have any problems approaching you, even though if you tell them to fuck off. So I don't know, like they're really aggressive and they are very straightforward. And unfortunately, this kind of aggressiveness is perceived by many girls to be so-called confidence. So in the end, my advice for girls is if you really want to meet a gentleman, then the first thing you should do is that you should take a more active approach to really try to find one. So let's say you can maybe, I don't know, start going to more social events. Don't stick, even if you go to a social event, don't stick to your friends the whole time. I mean, it's okay if you go with them, but don't just talk only to them. And most importantly, smile and be open to other people. So, because this is a very strong indication that you are open, sociable, and available. So, yeah. And when you're really talking to an interesting guy, please, by all means, I couldn't be more clear, try to make an effort to keep the conversation smooth. Because as a guy, we would also appreciate such effort then because we will know that you are interested, you are indeed interested in something deeper, and that you are really trying to make something happen. So yeah, it takes two hands to clap. So if you do not make an effort, guys would be turned off. And yeah, that's why people are saying finding love instead of waiting for love. You need to find them by yourself. So to conclude this point, I would say your attitude does make a difference when it comes to creating a good vibe, which you for sure definitely look for in a relationship. So the fourth problem that I would like to mention is double standards. So basically, it's like the society in general judge men way more harshly than women. So yeah, like it or not, it's a fact. And this actually makes it way harder for guys to attract girls nowadays. Because okay, let me clarify one thing. So when I mention about society, I'm talking about the whole society. Okay, so I'm not just talking about girls, but I'm also talking about men as well. So it includes both men and women. So yes, ironically, both men and women tend to have a higher standard on male attractiveness, which means they judge behavior of other men's as hard. So like for men, they would judge the behavior of other men as harshly as women. So I guess if you're a feminist, you might get offended by this opinion, but yeah, I mean, I understand your point, but let me just demonstrate my point with a few examples. So I'm gonna give you 3 examples to demonstrate my point. So first scenario. Let's say if a man offended a woman in a social scenario. Okay, so then basically everyone, of course, would just regard this man as an asshole. Basically, his reputation is completely ruined. However, if it's the opposite, when a woman offended a man in a social scenario, what would happen is like, so people would usually just ask the man to be a bit more forgiving towards the girl, and they'll probably say that okay, it's just her personality, or maybe it's because of something you said that prompted her to react this way, or some would even say, well, look, she's just testing you. She's just testing you, okay, just to see if you're smart enough, or blah blah blah. So, well, in the end, I guess there wouldn't be that many people that would go as far as calling her a bitch. So, example 2. Let's say if a good-looking man says something weird in a social scenario, okay? And very likely when girls heard that, they would just assume that like, okay, this guy's kind of creepy, weird, and basically his attractiveness is gone in the air. However, if, on the contrary, a good-looking girl said something equally weird in a social scenario, so I would say most men would just ignore it and just keep the talk going with her, or even still try to adapt to her jokes and try to compliment that she actually said something really funny. So basically, in the end, her attractiveness is not at all affected by whatever whatever the weird thing that she just said. And the third example. So imagine what's considered a hot guy. So for a guy to be hot, he needs to have first of all a very fit and muscular body, which requires like a lot of training in the gym, like really a lot of training, systematic training. And of course, he should probably also has a quite decent appearance, right? But think about it. What's the standard for a girl to be hot? Well, to be honest, as long as you look okay, all you need to do is just to dress stylish and, or even easier, dress your bikini and go to the beach. That's it. Then all the guys will say, wow, she's so hot. Yeah. So, in these cases, would you say it's double standard? I say it's double standard. So, what I'm saying is that this kind of double standard is a very clear proof of the gender inequality in this modern society. And to be honest, men like us, we're definitely like a huge victim of it. While girls don't need too much of an effort to make themselves to be considered as attractive, For men, it's the complete opposite. So it's not just about how much work you need to do on yourself to make yourself look attractive, but also you never know what you said or did that would be considered as unattractive. Okay, so like you need to be constantly worrying about whether you're behaving properly or not. And I would say this really contributes a lot to insecurity, and this insecurity would just damage your self-esteem and confidence. And on the on the contrary, of course, since mostly girls are not required to be sociable, and many of them I think really lacks the necessary social skills to make connection with guys. And I think this is probably the reason why many good-looking, attractive girls come across as somehow being a bit boring or introvert. Because the thing is, they're just not used to making connections with guys. Cause like, you know, in the reality, mostly it's the guys who would have to come to them and try to make the connection with them. So yeah, I guess they also have this kind of expectation as well. Like even if they meet a very great guy, they will still just expect the guys to make all the effort, make effective connections with her, while her just don't really need to do anything. So yeah, like unfortunately nowadays I think like men are putting too much effort to into adapting the needs and tastes of girls. And yeah, I guess as a man, this is a pretty sad thing, you know, because in the end, relationship is actually about equality. It's if there's adaptation involved, it should be both sides trying to adapt to each other instead of one side trying to adapt to the other. So yeah, I guess it's a hard thing to be a man in 21st century. So now I'm gonna talk about a completely different aspect, which is cultural difference. So does cultural difference play a role in my misfortune? So I would say not really, because given the fact that like I'm quite used to the Western culture already, but I would say maybe to a certain degree it can still have an influence. So yeah, like in general, I would say it's a minor one, but it still plays maybe a bit of a role. So for example, in China, guys don't tend to be very aggressive, very physical, or very sexual with girls because like it's considered culturally inappropriate. So for normal guys like us, I mean, of course there are fuckboys in China, but like for normal guys, for example, like me, we wouldn't go for kissing or something like that very early on. We would prefer to get to know the girl a bit better before we actually make a move or something. But of course, I mean, we're not that inflexible. So let's say if we get like a clear signal from the beginning that she really wants something from us, then of course we can be just as open and aggressive as Westerners, basically. So I think if a girl expect me to behave like certain very aggressive Western dudes, I would say first of all, don't really expect me to do that because it's my culture. And second of all, if you really want me to do that, please give me a clear signal for me to do that. So yeah, like I think this is like the cultural influence I will say about right now. But speaking of expectation, I would say there's actually another cultural factor that I would like to mention, which might actually play an important role. I'm not sure, but that's my assumption, which is expectation based on cultural stereotypes. So, what do I mean by expectations based on cultural stereotypes? So, about that, I'm going to use a friend of mine as example. So, we met each other while I was living in France. So, there are two things you need to know about him. First of all, he is by all means a very great friend. He is super gentle, open-minded, well cultivated, and in his own words, he can be a bit nerdy sometimes. And the second thing you need to know about him is that he's Moroccan. So, okay, why do I want you to know these two things? So, he told me that in France or in Europe in general, what he found was like many girls expected him to be very aggressive, sexual, and behave even a bit like a hooligan, something like that. I guess the French word is wesh, yeah, or the Spanish word cani. So because like why? Because this fits the Western stereotype on the so-called attractive Arab guys. So basically yeah, so let's say a lot of girls they have this obsession on Arabic dudes, which they believes that like the real masculine Arabic dudes should be, aggressive, something like that. And so again, as I mentioned, he is a really gentle person. And so to behave like this is kind of against his nature. But then like in the end he was kind of forced to behave like this just just so that he could get girls. So basically in the end he was forced to adapt himself into the stereotype and yeah, just for the sake of girls kind of. So yeah, like so of course he did eventually get successes, quite some successes actually. But in the end, he didn't really enjoy it that much because basically he had to pretend to be another person against his nature to, you know, act as an attractive guy in front of girls. So the question here is this really love? I wouldn't say, I don't even need to use my own words to say that because Bachata has given us an answer already. It goes like, no, no es amor, lo que tú sientes se llama obsesión. So yeah, it's not love. What are you thinking about? It's obsession. So as I mentioned, if that's an obsession, that's not love. It's actually quite unhealthy. So I'm saying I don't know exactly, but maybe this could have happened to me as well. So perhaps some girls they have an expectation on me before they talk to me, based on my race and nationality. And so let's say if I didn't behave according to their expectations, perhaps they just kind of loses interest in me and gets turned off, something like that. Like so again, I'm saying I don't know how often this situation happened to me, or if it actually happened to me, but I would say if it actually happened to me, I would consider this by all means as a form of racism, because it's really no different from this kind of yellow fever thing, which is, as you might have heard, certain white men having this obsession on Asian women because they think, of course, according to the stereotype, the Asian woman should be very obedient, yeah, something like that, submissive, stuff like that. So, I mean, if that's racism, I don't see, if a girl has this kind of racial expectations on me, then I don't, yeah, that's also racism. I don't see why it's not. So, yeah, like my point is that I really want girls to appreciate me for who I am because, as I mentioned earlier, I really value connection. So, and really, having lived in 5 countries already, like, how could you really expect me to be a so-called typical Chinese, right? So, if you're also someone who has really diverse cultural background or experiences, that would be something I really appreciate because then like I would not expect you to behave like a typical girl from a certain country. I would expect you to be just who you are, and I would expect in return you to appreciate me for who I am. So, with all the aforementioned problems, I think it's time for me to introduce you the concept of fast food relationship. So, of course, due to all the aforementioned problems, and plus the influence of social media, for instance, Instagram and Tinder, people now tend to have a more superficial attitude towards love. So it's like for example, they don't really care about the inner quality of the opposite sex. For example, like all these virtues that I've mentioned about, they don't really have the patience to get to know someone. So it's like maybe after one date or something, if they don't think it goes well, they will be just like, nah, okay, I don't want to see him again. And yeah, like even when it comes to dating, they kind of seek too much for, let's say, attention or sometimes just pure experience. and most importantly, for sure, they lack the ability to make connections. So to summarize this, I would say this really fits, like this kind of trend of development really fits this concept of the so-called fast food style relationship. So what is a fast food style relationship? Like this is a concept which was developed in China in the 21st century. So it has, of course, certain characteristics. So for example, love is all about experience, or to be, or it's like the idea about this is basically just to be with someone together for a while, and without, since okay, like since it's like a short-term relationship anyways, like you shouldn't put too much devotion into it. And then like after you had some experience with whoever that is in love or sex or anything, then you don't have to stick together with that specific person, and yeah, you can end the relationship, or I don't know, anything you want. And the mentality behind this kind of relationship is basically like, so don't take love itself too seriously, and of course, you also don't need to take your partner so seriously. Okay, so what's my opinion on fast food style relationship? So actually, well, just to let you know, I'm not completely against it. So I actually have like a quite complicated opinion on it. So I'll say first of all, there is definitely a positive side, which is so like the core spirit of fast food style relationship is that you need to be experimental, and I totally agree with it because for me, I think like one needs, if one is to find out what he or she really wants in a relationship, he has to try out a lot of times, and therefore, yeah, this person should be experimental, and especially considering the fact that like nowadays many people are really not that open minded when it comes to dating people. So yeah, like I think this kind of mentality actually needs to be encouraged due to the fact that not many people are open minded about dating because apparently they have a specific type or even obsession. And the second point is like, so through many experiments and many tries, you can learn valuable lessons from it. So, for example, how to keep a relationship smooth, how to deal with conflicts in a relationship, or in general, like how to make the other person happy. So the important thing about these experiences is like, imagine if one day you're really together with someone that suits you, the right one, then you would have all the valuable experiences to deal with this relationship to make it smooth and everlasting. And so yeah, like in a way you can say like all of these unserious relationships in the past, they are kind of a good practice. But of course, there's also a lot of negative aspects to this style of relationship. So first of all, since you take neither the relationship itself seriously nor your partner seriously, it's hard for you to have a high quality relationship, first of all. And of course, there's also no devotion and love, which is definitely not going to make the relationship last any longer. And I think the most devastating part about this type of relationship is that like, so um, since this is a very unstable relationship, it will cause a lot of anxiety and insecurity, and yeah, like in the end it will just make people stressed out about relationships and somehow even depressed about it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of negative influence about it. So of course, this, let's say, fast food style relationship is getting more and more popular nowadays, and it really creates a very complicated situation. So as a countermeasure, in my opinion, as a countermeasure to this kind of situation, this kind of relationship, people tend to go to the other extreme for relationships. So let's say some people would just choose to avoid falling in love at all, just so that they wouldn't have to go through all these shits. But I think more people actually somehow decide to force themselves into a long-term stable relationship. So like when I'm saying forcing oneself into this relationship, it's like they kind of it's like even if they know like it's not really working that well, they still kind of just stick onto it for a long time. And what I realized is that like so it's especially common with girls nowadays to do it like this, or at least here in Germany. So basically, yeah, like like as I mentioned, they tend to stick together with their partner even if they know that like the relationship is not really working. And of course, at the same time, they kind of like neglects the problems in the relationship, and they try really hard to convince themselves that like okay, whatever they have right now is really the best option for them. And so basically, the attitude here is like instead of like focusing on love and connection itself within the relationship, they put they prioritize loyalty and devotion, and as if that's like the only thing that matters to a stable relationship. And I don't know, like this is actually a quite interesting phenomenon because like so in my observation, maybe it's not accurate, but I will say like the super forward and modern way of love, which is the fast food style relationship, it actually in a way increased the popularity of the super traditional way of love, which is like forcing a long term stable relationship. Like the reason why I would say it's like a really traditional way of love because like if I look at from my cultural background, this is the kind of concept in China which was I don't know in the 60s, 70s, or even before the foundation of the People's Republic of China in the so-called old world, the old society in our terminology. So yeah, it's like in Germany, like this is absolutely the case in my opinion because like so on the one hand you can see like if you just open up Tinder, you can see a lot of girls, a lot of young single girls who are on Tinder. Okay, hopefully they're single. I don't know. A lot of girls on Tinder, and honestly speaking, they're quite picky about guys because I've seen the selection process of some of them. But then, like on the other hand, you also see a lot of girls who takes relationships as seriously as a marriage. So it's like I don't know, like for a relationship, they've been sticking together for like 6, 7, 8 years, and I don't know. Some in extreme cases, they can even get engaged in a certain at a very young age, which I also happen to know some people are like that. And but the thing is, like when you really look at these couples, you can absolutely tell that they just aren't really that in love with each other. And in fact, like some of them, they don't even like or trust their partner in a way. So, like my confusion here is like, so if you're not really enjoying this relationship, why try so hard to pretend that this relationship is working? So yeah, like I mean, you could have gotten any guys in the world, or at least in your city or something. So yeah, why stick on to this one guy and why even get attached to this relationship this much? I don't really understand. So why do people stick to a low quality relationship, or why did they even start such relationship in the first place? My assumption is like so. Perhaps some people they go into relationships simply because they feel lonely or insecure, and so yeah, like even when they're in the relationship, they of course they have this fear of losing the relationship, and like I understand, I really understand this kind of way of thinking because when I was younger, I also think like this as well. Like I was really insecure about myself, and I really think like okay, if I lose her, like if I fall in love with a girl, and if I lose her, it's gonna like completely destroy me, something like that. But then like I would say it's like first of all your values built upon who you are, so like it should not be defined by what your partner do to you. And also I also believe that like if a relationship is getting toxic already, it will not likely go any better. Like it's not gonna change towards a better direction just because you want it to get better, you know? So and also like you need to understand that, like if you stay a very long time in an unhappy relationship, it will just do shit tons of psychological damage to you. And it's like again, like I want to introduce you a Chinese phrase. It's called 长痛不如短痛. So long pain, no, it's like more like okay, rather short pain than long pain, right? So if you're already in a toxic relationship, let's call it a short pain, which you want to get the pain right now, or would you want the longer pain, which is like a divorce or something after 6 or 7 years? So like really it's up to your choice, you know. So yeah, like but in the end, I would just want to say that like whatever kind of relationship you're looking for, fast food or traditional relationship, the connection itself is the most important thing in a relationship. So like if you don't feel the connection, okay, then I don't know if it's still necessary for you to stick to the relationship, because basically like the core of a relationship is gone already. And yeah, so and also if you're insecure, I would just say, well, don't feel like this way, because you need to know that out there will always be someone better for you, someone that's really that you could really fall in love with. So yeah, in the end, you just need to be brave enough to reach out and find the real love. And yeah, that's the kind of spirit I've been talking about for the whole video, I would say. So after talking about so many problems, I think right now it's time that we talk a bit about how can we change things. So what can be changed? So as mentioned, there are a lot of problems, and of course, there's a lot of things that need to be changed. But the most important thing I would say is that like, so the changes to these problems should by no means comes from a legal or institutional perspective. So it's like, you know, you can't have like laws or anything to force people to behave in the same way. But rather, I would say it's more about a change in our minds. So the way we think, how we perceive things. So therefore, like I couldn't point out like a specific measure, but I could only point out some, let's say, some directions towards which we could change and improve things. So I think the first thing that could change is that men should have a higher standard on girls. So we can see that nowadays, girls are quite picky on guys, and while on the other hand, guys just kind of go for, I mean, not all of them, but a lot of them just kind of go for whatever the girls they could find. And so it's like, I think like this kind of action kind of makes girls even more pickier, for sure, and kind of makes guys in a way cheaper in front of girls. So I've always have this kind of like I've always been thinking, what if guys start to act as picky as girls? Could this have made the situation better? So let's say take me as an example. So like I used to have like a really high standard on girls. Okay, so like I really want to find someone who is, of course, aside from good looking, she's nice and warm. She also loves culture and traveling. Of course, that's quite important from my experience. Like I think like she should definitely be able to relate to my thoughts and my life experiences, and she should definitely also be sympathetic and caring, because like I think that's kind of like, for me, that's like the core of femininity as opposed to masculinity. And she should definitely be chill and open-minded, because then like, you know, I don't want to feel stressed out with her all the time. And yeah, I think like this is like the standard I have on a girl. Maybe there are more, but like these are the basic ones I would say. So yeah, like I would say this is probably like quite high standard. So like at first I have been looking for girls like this for quite a long time, and I guess until one point, probably like maybe 2 years ago or something, 1 year into me living in Europe, I kind of realized that like most of the girls that I met, they're not really like that. And of course, I've met some, but as mentioned, they're taken. And also, what I realized is that here, at least in Europe, like most guys also don't really have such a high standard on girls, at least not with a personality. So basically, under such circumstance, most girls are not motivated to improve themselves, to make themselves be kind of similar to what I've just mentioned. And so, unfortunately, I cannot change this trend. So, I kind of realized like, okay, if I keep on sticking to my own standard, my original high standard, I would just end up getting nothing, basically. And so, unfortunately, in the end, I had to kind of lower my standards a little bit just to, you know, adapt to reality and get something for myself. Shame on me. But like, so what I would say, what I would make of an analogy of the situation would be like, so it's kind of like two snipers on the battlefield trying to snipe out each other. Basically, so both are hidden behind shelters or covers and everything. They can't really see each other, and the principle here is like whoever moves first gets their head blown off. And unfortunately, in in a relationship or like a dating scenario, usually it's the guys who moves first because they just can't control their fucking horniness. And yeah, they make the move first, put themselves in a disadvantageous position, not just for themselves, but men in general, let's say. And yeah, I think like yeah, therefore by making a move first, by not controlling ourselves, we kind of put ourselves in a disadvantageous situation. Because then like the thing is like girls would know eventually that okay, men would come to them sooner or later and adapt to their needs. And so yeah, like in this sense, if it's the men that's always doing the adaptation, why would the girls have motivation to improve themselves? So yeah, like my suggestion is to say like so men should first of all definitely put more attention on the girl's inner qualities, like some things that I've mentioned earlier, rather than just the appearance. Um, so yeah, like I mean, with inner quality, I'm talking about both like personality and also cultivation, because sure, like I've also met girls who are like smart and good looking, but they give you off a very arrogant and inapproachable vibe, which personally I find it a bit unbearable. So So what I'm saying here is like as men, we should start to have a standard on girls, or otherwise we're just making things harder for ourselves, basically. So another thing I think that could change is so for men, don't be a lad and look down upon guys who are unsuccessful with girls. So like as I mentioned earlier, so some men tend to disrespect you, like if they see that you are less successful with girls than other guys. And like as I also mentioned, this really damages your confidence and your self-esteem. And so, to be honest, I think like if a man he disrespects you for simply that you're not successful with girls, this already make him like very superficial and also in a way pretty stupid. Because like I've mentioned all these characteristics about masculinity earlier, and these are I think what men should be actually valued with. And so let's say if a man has some of these virtues or values, like this alone should make him a respected person, regardless of how successful he is with girls. And like yeah, so also like let's say if you are a lad who really puts respect on a man based on if he can get girls or not, then I would just I don't know, I would just tell you that you're kind of harming yourselves in a way. Because sure, you will feel super confident and cocky when you somehow slept with some girls. And of course, yeah, like you would feel that like you're really a valuable man, really attractive man. But imagine when you start to have difficulties, when you start getting failures with girls, or even when you start to getting less success with them, not like no success at all, but just less success. Imagine how much damage it's gonna do to you. Because then like when you put all your values on the fact that you can get girls, then when the girls are gone, so so is your self value. Your value is also gone. Like I'm not doing this just to threaten people or something, because like I've known so many guys who are like that, and I've seen what that has done to them. So like yeah, in the end, I just want to so like I'm just saying this as a friendly suggestion, as friendly advice, so that you wouldn't end up like some of these guys, because yeah, I've just seen like how devastating it could be for them. So yeah, what I'm gonna say is that like a person's confidence should be built or should be based on what you really are, instead of how much sex you can get. So otherwise, I don't know, how can you really distinguish yourself from animals? I mean, isn't that what animals are doing? after all. So think about it. And so these are the suggestions I have for guys, and for girls, I have something else. So, what I would say first of all, as girls, try to have a more sophisticated standard on guys, and as well as, if possible, try to improve yourself a bit more. So, when I say a more sophisticated standard, I mean like girls should be better at identifying attractive attractive men. So, like for example, with all of those masculinity traits I've mentioned above, um, so the reason why I'm saying this is because I really like in my personal experience, I find that girls are not really good at picking up attractive traits from guys. So again, I would use my personal experience as example. So here in Europe, for example, when I go to an international social event, which I go to a lot, I would of course speak mostly English, and at the same time, I would also make it clear that I can also speak German and also a bit of French and Spanish as well. So, but of course, if you think it from a stereotypical way, as you can probably imagine, that most Chinese people don't speak English that well, not to mention like being able to speak other languages. So, I guess the fact that as a Chinese, I could understand a lot of foreign languages, that should be somewhat of an interesting trait, right? Because then at least this kind of shows people that I'm in a way an intelligent guy. But to my disappointment, I rarely met girls who would compliment or even notice something about my language skills. So like especially with English, because like maybe with German they might compliment a bit more, but like when I'm just speaking English, like yeah, basically nobody really tells me that hey, you speak really well, you speak English really well, something like that. And yeah, so like I don't know, like for me it's quite weird, because for me, if I meet a girl who's really talented at languages, I would at least show her a bit more interest, you know, and like okay, like I'm not saying I would always compliment her outright, but like you can tell from my behavior that I would be more interested in her. Like especially if she's able to understand, for example, some pretty hard languages like Chinese, for example. Like if a girl's able to understand Chinese, even just the basics, I would be very intrigued. So yeah, like the reason I'm saying this is like so my assumption is that like maybe for these girls like being good at like if they're not super shy about expressing themselves, maybe for them being intelligent and being good at languages is just not something that's really attractive, I guess, or like something, or at least that's not something that interests them. And yeah, I don't know. And also because the reason why I use language as an example is because like my language skills is of course something quite obvious, and or if not the most obvious thing, and I think that's something you could pick up from me the moment when you see me. So like if a girl cannot appreciate that, then I don't know what else can she really appreciate from me if she tends to neglect even the most basic aspects of me. Yeah, so in this case, I would say at least, they're not really good at discovering, let's say, attractiveness from guys. For yeah, like for example, as I mentioned, intelligence with language skills and stuff like that. So I think what would be helpful for girls is that like they should really start focusing on the more I don't know how to say it's like maybe they should really start focusing on improving their cultivation and personality, because when I believe when girls start to value their own inner qualities, then in return they would also start to value the inner qualities of men, because then like you know they would really appreciate from their heart these qualities. So let's say for example, if a girl is interested in art, then naturally she would appreciate some guy who can, let's say, draw sketches or at least have like the same taste of art as her. So yeah, and yeah, I think that's like the the most basic thing for girls to do. Because then, like, on the other hand, if you think this way, if she's not interested in art at all, then, like, even if she meets a guy who can draw as well as Leonardo da Vinci, she wouldn't care. Like, that's nothing for them. So, like, again, going back to my example with my language skills. So let's say, for example, if a girl, she never really tried to cultivate her language skills. Like, I mean, by that I mean, like, if she never really tried hard to learn languages or something like that, yeah, I guess, like, she just wouldn't really appreciate the fact that, like, a guy like me can speak many languages. So yeah, that's the so yeah, that's what I'm saying about discovering attractiveness about guys. So yeah, I think, like, in the end, if both men and women have a higher and more sophisticated standard when it comes to, choosing their partners, it would definitely make falling in love way easier and healthier in this society. And speaking of this, I would just like to add, like, one last point, which is also advice for girls, which is don't put too much value on your face and body, because, like, this is not something you have worked hard to get. Okay, maybe with body, like, you can say from gym, but yeah, but you know what I'm talking about. So this is something you're born with, and if you really put all your value on your face and body or your appearance in general, um, I would say in a way you're kind of materializing yourself, because then you're just telling guys, hey, I'm attractive because I look pretty. And I don't know, I guess it's not really a good thing. So by all means, put more effort on improving your inner values, your cultivation, your personality, and focus a bit less on your superficial appearance. So yeah, that's all I would like to say for today, and these are all just my personal opinions, so I hope you would find it somehow helpful or interesting and you would enjoy this video. And if you have a comment, if you have an opinion, please leave it in the comments so I will see it, and I would really love to know how your feedbacks are. And also, I think, so what I've just mentioned about everything, I think it could be useful to a lot of people out there in the society. So it would really be my honor if I could one day go to speak about this topic publicly, let's say, for example, a TED Talk. So yeah, if you really like the video, please share it, spread it, and maybe your support will help me achieve this goal. So yeah, again, thank you for your patience, and if you had made this far to the video, if you had watched it to the end, I would thank you for your support and your patience. So yeah, see you next time.